Welcome you all in EPG Pathshala. Myself, Dr. Muhammad Nazrul Bari, associated with Department of History, Central University of Karnataka. Today we are going to discuss about the social and cultural history of India, that too of Delhi Sultanate. The Delhi Sultanate, which was established in 1206 after the Second Battle of Tarain, and that was continued up to 1526. We have certain objectives of this module. The first, to know the social and cultural life of the people during Sultanate period. Second, contribution of Turkish ruler and their nobles in the existing social life of India. Third, understanding the popular amusement or time pass of the people. While fourth, about the life and condition of women. Next, contribution of Sufi and Bhakti saints and its impact on the life of people of Sultanate age. Understand the emergence of Sikh religion and the role of their Sikh gurus in promotion of the religion of Sikh. And the last, development of literature, fine art and architecture. First time Muslim rule was established in North India in 1206, that too after the defeat of Prithviraj Chauhan in the second battle of Panipat year 1192. And that Sultanate period continued up to 1526, up to the decline of or the defeat of Ibrahim Lodi by Babur, the Mughal founder or the dynasty founder of Mughal dynasty. Once Muslim rule was established in India, they have cultural exchange with the existing religious people of India, that was mainly Hindus. They intermarried and took to the culture of Indians in dress, speech, manner and intellectual outlooks. The two religions, Islam and Hindu, they influence each other very profoundly. At the same time, some religious reforms also took place, that was mainly among Muslim by Sufis and Hindu, that too by Bhakti leaders. And one independent religious came into origin, that was Sikhism in 16th century. Now first here we will discuss about the classification of society, on that too on the basis of economic status. See, caste system that was part and parcel of Indian society was prevailing during medieval time or during Sultanate period also. But here we will focus the society which was divided on the basis of economic status. First, it was aristocrat. In the category of aristocrat, kings, nobles, ministers, they were the people who came in the category of aristocracy. While next was priest. Here the Brahmins of Hindu religion and ulemas who were close to the power, they were enjoying the special status because they used to receive land grants by the king or the Raja of their faith. Then the town people. In this category of town people, there was a people like merchants, trader, big businessmen. They were the part of this class. Next was peasants, the farmer. They were mainly indulged in agricultural activities. And the last one was slavery or the slave. Slave, during medieval period, there was a evidence that there was a market on a regular basis of the slaves, and where people have a money, those who are economically rich, they can go and purchase the slave according to their economic status, and they can use the slave according to their own wish. But the condition of slave here in Sultanate period was much better than the previous age. Here even Qutbuddin Aibak, who himself was a slave of Muhammad Ghori, becomes Sultan. And similarly, Iltutmish, who was the son-in-law of Muhammad Qutbuddin Aibak, he also becomes Sultan. Later on, Balban, who was a slave, later he also becomes Sultan. So we can understand by this example, the condition of slave was much better than the previous one, and they were highly respected in the society. Now here we will focus about the condition of women. As there is a tragedy with women, women were never treated equal in any part of history or any corner of the world since prehistoric days. In the same way, they were not treated equal to male also in Indian subcontinent during medieval period. They occasionally received education and many of them had acquired scholarly fame. Education for women was mainly open for elite section of the society or the rich class or the ruling class. The poor section or the poor family, they did not allow their women to have a educations. There was no widow remarriage, and the widows either become sati in the pyre of their husband or pass their lives as a woman hermit. It's another tragedy with the women during medieval period, which was continued since ancient age. Women were not allowed to remarry. There are very scattered evidences where there is a evidence of remarriage of women after the divorce or after the death of their husband. While after the death of the husband, widow are not supposed to have a colorful dress, no makeup, no ornaments and nothing. They used to have a white dress only, and that was the stigma on in the society. People don't allow the widow to come and sit in their house to mix with their family. In the same way, there was a system of Johar, which was another method to subjugate women. As we have the evidence, Sati and Johar, this was the method which was used mainly during medieval period, that too in the certain section of the society, to create an impression that women are not equal to the male. Sati, we all know, after the death of the husband, a lady will have to die with the same funeral pyre, and there was a concept that if the lady will die with her husband, so both and husband will be together in the heaven for the millions of years to come. In the same way, Johar, it was a system mainly popular in Rajputana of Rajasthan area or adjoining area of Rajasthan, wherever the Rajput rulers, they used to go for a war and they had a threat that they may be defeated in the war. They put their wives and women together in one house and put fire into it. They don't want after their defeat, their enemy will humiliate them and they will not give them proper regard and respect. Because of that fear, Johar system was introduced in Rajputana, and we have the evidence that some Muslim ruler also followed the same method with their royal family. The another method to subjugate women was Parda system and child marriage. Parda system was a system, as it is said, introduced in India with the coming of Muslim, and child marriage, where again it was a system a child will get married in the age of 7 or 8, so we will not allow them to get education, we will not allow them whatever he or she wanted to do in his or her life. Devdasi system, this was another way of subjugating women, and this was the way through which a lady are supposed to work in a temple, and she was supposed to be the slave of God. In the same way, polygamy was extensively prevailing in society among both Hindu and Muslim community. Polygamy is a system through which male can have more than one wife. It was mainly popular among the ruling class, rich class, or people who are economically sound. Now we will focus on food habits and clothing. Generally, the Hindus were vegetarian, and while the Muslims were non-vegetarian. Among the Muslims, the Sufi or people who were under their influence avoiding eating meat. All sorts of cloth made of silk, cotton and wool were used by the people, and there was improvement in them. Different types of ornaments from head to toe were used by both males and females, and were made not only of gold and silver, but of pearls, diamond and precious stones. Here we wanted to tell you that since ancient period, large section of peoples were vegetarian. While with the coming of Muslim rule in India, non-vegetarian diet become more popular, and which was gradually adopted by the ruling class, not by Brahmins and Baniyas or the merchant class of Hindu religion. Now, here we will discuss about rise of Sufism, how the Sufi saints start promoting the idea of peace, idea of brotherhood, idea of respecting and tolerating each other. So Sufism is a common term used for Islamic mysticism. They had a liberal religious outlook and believed in the unity of all religions. Sufism originated in Iran and find a congenial atmosphere in India under the Turkish rule. Sufi saints such as Moinuddin Chishti, Nizamuddin Auliya, Fariduddin Ganja Shakar were the pioneer Sufi who are still loved, respected and honored in India. Khanka, the institutions set up by the Sufis in northern India, took Islam deeper into the countryside. Sufi were the group of people, they were not attached with the ruling class. They used to live a simple life, that too in a area where common people are living. But yes, there was a donation given by the ruling class, irrespective of their religious belief, and we have the evidence that even Hindu rulers also give donation to the Sufi saints and their dargahs. Here, mazar and taqiyas also become the center of propagation of Islamic ideas during medieval Sultanate age. They were patronized by aristocracy and common people. Sufi were organized into religious orders or silsilas. Their silsilas were named after their founder, such as Chishti Silsila, Suharwardi Silsila, Qadriya Silsila, and Naqshbandi Silsilas. Nizamuddin Auliya, one of the prominent Sufi saints of 14th century Delhi, he was from Chishti Silsila. Similarly, Moinuddin Chishti of Ajmer, he was founder member of Chishti Silsila. According to Abul Fazl, the man who wrote the memoirs of Akbar, what he said, there was a 14 silsilas in India during the 16th century. In order to attain the state of mystical ecstasy, the Sufis listened to poetry and music, which were originally in Persian but later switched to Hindavi or Hindustani. As per the teaching of Islam, music is not permitted, but once Chishti Silsila established their khankas here, they adopted the traditional Indian music and make mixing of some Persian influence also in that, and there was a system of sama or qawwali which was invented by them, and still in 21st century there is a system mainly popular among the Chishti Sufis dargah. There is a qawwali program at the time of Urs, which was the great achievement of the Chishti Silsila, through which they attracted good number of people who do not believe in their religion, and they got converted into Islam later on. Now the next religious reform was Bhakti movement during Sultanate period. Here there was a two group of Bhakti people. One was Nirguna, those who do believe that there is no form of God. So if there is no form of God, there is no need of make idol of the God and worship it. While the other group, they were known as Shaguna, they do believe that God must be worshipped in the form of idol, then only we can concentrate on our spiritual attainment. As per the Hindu religious belief, there is a system that every Hindu people, they will have to get salvation, that is moksha. Moksha is what? The freedom from the cycle of birth and rebirth. During Rig Vedic period, there was an idea that only through rituals you can attain salvation. Then Upanishad came. Upanishad talk about knowledge. Through knowledge you can attain salvation. But knowledge was not available to every section of the society. While once Bhakti movement started, they start emphasizing no, through devotion you can also attain nirvana or salvation. And for devotion, you don't need to read and learn Sanskrit, you don't need to spend money for the different kind of rituals. So Bhakti basically promoted the same idea which was promoted by Sufi in most of the cases. Bhakti leaders, they were popular among the artisans, craftsmen and traders in the towns, and their essential belief was in the need to unite with the God. Bhakti saints they laid stress on love or devotion as the basis of relationship with the God, and this Bhakti saint attacked the rigidity in caste system in religion and its rituals. They also encouraged women to join in their religious gatherings. Now, as we have discussed, one important religion came into origin, that was Sikhism, and Sikh religion was founded in Punjab during 15th century. According to Sikh tradition, Sikhism was established by Guru Nanak, who born in the year 1469 and died in the year 1539, and subsequently led by a succession of 9 other gurus. All 10 human gurus, Sikh believe, were inhabited by a single spirit. Upon the death of the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, in the year 1708, the spirit of eternal Guru transferred itself to the sacred scripture of Sikhism, that is what we call it. Guru Nanak, member of Khatri, that was a trading caste, and far from literature, Nanak was not a typical saint born in Punjab, which has been the home of Sikh faith ever since. Nanak composed many hymns which were collected in the Adi Granth of fifth collected in the Adi Granth by the fifth Guru Arjun in the year 1604. Here I would like to mention that the place where Golden Temple is situated, that land was donated by Akbar, and the foundation stone was laid by Mian Mir, a popular Sufi of Lahore, who was invited by the Sikh people of Amritsar to lay the foundation stone for the Golden Temple. So what we can get idea out of it, there was a mutual understanding, respect of each other religion, to believe and to respecting each other religious ideas and respecting religious morality was the fashion during medieval age. Now we will focus on learning, literature and the art during Sultanate period. After the sack of Baghdad in the year 1258, Delhi was perhaps the most important cultural center in Muslim East. Actually, if you will read the history, you will find in early phase of 13th century, Mongols, they attacked on several cities of West Asia, Central Asia, and they have a regular threat to India in 13th century and early 14th century. They attacked Baghdad, who was supposed to be the religious and cultural capital of Islam. So after the attack, what happened? Most of the Muslim scholars who are having mastery over Arabic and Persian literature, they migrated to Delhi in search of job and to save their life from the Mongol invasion. When the Mongol destroyed the cultural center of Central and Western Asia, and the poets, scholar and man of letters from this area took refuge in India. Balban, who gave high offices of the state only to the person of good families, welcomed these distinguished refugees, and many illustrious family of Muslim India trace their origin to this period. Now in this section we will focus mainly on the development or growth of Arabic and Persian literature. The greatest amount of literature produced by the Muslim was in Arabic, which was the language of the Prophet Muhammad. Turks who came to India were deeply influenced by the Persian language, which had become the literary and administrative language of Central Asia and Iran from the 10th century onwards. Some of the greatest poets of the Persian language, such as Firdausi and Sadi and the great poet of mystics love, Sinai, Iraqi, Jami, Hafiz, lived and composed their works between 10th and 14th century. Amir Khusro and Amir Hassan Dehlvi was a poet of considerable eminence. Amir Khusro is described as a musical and most pleasing. Amir Khusro, he also composed a diwan and wrote a memoirs of Sheikh Nijamuddin Aulia, who was his guru or teacher. He was also an accomplished musician and took part in religious musical gathering that was known as Sama, organized by the famous Sufi saint Nijamuddin Aulia. And the literature he produced was mainly in Persian, and he was one of the authors who started Hindavi to reach to the common people. Important historians of the period are Minhajus Siraj, Zawuddin Barni, Afif, and Isami. Minhajus Siraj, who was the author of Tabaqat-e-Nasiri, while Zawuddin Barni was the author of Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi. The Shams-e-Siraj Afif was another author who continued the work of Zawuddin Barni, the period where he left. Shams-e-Siraj Afif continue from that period for the further age, and that his book is known as Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi. Zawuddin Barni was the author of Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi, while Shams-e-Siraj Afif continued the Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi of Barni. Zia Naqshbandi was the first to translate Sanskrit story into Persian with the title of Tutinama. That can be correctly translated into English as the Book of the Parrot, written in the time of Muhammad Tughlaq. At the time of Firoz Shah, Sanskrit books on medicine and music were translated into Persian. Sultan Zawuddin of Kashmir, who was better known as Akbar of Kashmir, had the famous historical work Raj Tarangani and Mahabharata translated into Persian. Sanskrit work on medicine and music also translated into Persian for the better understanding of the system, the culture of India. Now here we will mainly discuss about the development of Sanskrit literature under Sultanate period or Sultanate age. Sanskrit continued to be a vehicle of higher thought and a medium for literature during the period under review. The Hindu rulers, particularly those of Warangal and the Vijayanagar Empire, provided encouragement of Sanskrit literature. Hamir Deva, Kumbhakarna, Pratap Rudra Deva, Basant Raja, Bima Bhala, Katya Vem, Virupaksha, Narsingh, Krishnadev Raya, and many other like rulers patronized Sanskrit scholars and encouraged their writings. Sayana wrote his famous commentary on the Vedas during this period only. Now Madhava was responsible for the composition of Sivgama Srotra. Ramanuja wrote his commentary on Brahma Sutras. Many books on yoga, Nyaya, Vasishtha system of philosophy were written during this period. The Geet Govinda of Jayadeva is an excellent specimen of typical poetry. In the development of Sanskrit, even Jain people also contributed a lot. Nagachandra, also known as Abhinav Pampa, was the author of Pampa Ramayana. The other Jain writers were Hema Chandra, Prabha Chandra, Asadhara, and Sakalakriti played an important role in the development of Sanskrit. Attempt was also made to translate Islamic work or Persian literature into Sanskrit language. Translation was made in Sanskrit of the love story of Yusuf and Zulekha, written by the famous Persian poet, that too in Sanskrit language for the larger audience of elite section of the Hindu religion. Now, the growth of regional language under Sultanate age, that was from 13th to 16th century, first quarter of 16th century. Literary works on high quality were produced in many of the regional languages as well. Many of these languages such as Hindi, Bengali and Marathi trace their origin back to 11th century or so. Some others such as Tamil were much older. Buddhist and Jain and the Nathpanthis, Siddhas, had used the corrupt language Apabhramsha as also local language for their work in preference of Sanskrit, because Apabhramsa was the language of the people in which common men were interested, common masses were interested. Sanskrit was the language of mainly the elite educated Hindu class, mainly the Brahmins. Amir Khusru was regarded as a Persian poet and writer who wrote in Hindi and Urdu. His view was that Hindi language was not inferior to any religion, including Persian. The Khari Boli and Braj Bhasha, mostly spoken in western Uttar Pradesh, provided the base for the growth of Hindi literature. Chand Bardai proposed the Prithviraj Raso, an epic poem in Hindi about the life of Prithviraj Raso. Similarly, Jag Nayak was the author of Alakhanda in Hindi. In that book, the deeds of love and war of Ala and Udal, two brave warriors of Parmala of Mahova, are described in great detail. Sarangdhara was the author of Hamir Rasau, and Hamir Kavya contained an account of the glories of Raja Hamir of Ranthambore. Vidyapati Thakur, who wrote works in Sanskrit, Hindi and Maithili. Maithili is the language which is quite popular in Bihar, in a region that we call it Mithila, towards the end of 14th century. Similarly, Nusrat Shah of Bengal had the Mahabharata and Ramayana translated into Bengali language. Maladhar Basu also translated the Bhagavata into Bengali under his patronage and gave patronage to Bengali poets. Narsi Mehta, a poet of Gujarat, wrote beautiful short religious songs. Kriti Vasa prepared a Bengali translation of Ramayana from Sanskrit. Krishna Devaraya himself wrote a poem called Amukta Malyada. In eastern UP, Sufi saints such as Mullah Daud, the author of Chandayan, Malik Muhammad Jaisi, he himself was a great Sufi of that period, wrote in Hindi and put forward Sufi concept in a form of which could be easily understood by the common people. They popularized many Persian forms such as Masnavi. Now in this section we will mainly focus on development of fine arts under Sultanate age. First, in this category we will mainly discuss music. What was the impact of music with the establishment of Sultanate age, and how the system of music got enriched with the synthesis of Indian and Iranian sense of music. Among the non-literary arts, music rather than painting or a sculpture underwent important development during the period of Sultanate. The result was the creation in North India of new type of music quite different from the traditional Indian music which maintained its hold in South India. Credit for this important work of synthesis is given to the poet like Amir Khusru. The interest of Chishti Sufis in Hindustani music and its practical cultivation by them further ensured its popularity. The next stage was reached during the establishment of the independent Muslim kingdom at Jaunpur. Jaunpur is a city now near to Banaras. Here music received a special attention both at the royal court and in the Sufi monasteries or Khanka. The two most important Indian Muslim musicians of the day were Sultan Hussain Sharki, the last king of Jaunpur, and the contemporary saint Pir Bodhan of Barnawa. The contribution of Sultan Hussain to the development of Indian music was much more specific. He is regarded as the original founder of Khyal, a school of music which slowly matured and took final shape in the day of later Mughal, particularly under Muhammad Shah. People call him Rangila. Here we will now focus on painting. There are hardly any examples of court painting during Sultanate period. There is, however, no doubt that the new culture which the Sultanate ruler brought with them had already started influencing the social Indian style in this period. Feature of Delhi Sultanate painting that are based on Indian traditions include groups of people standing in rows or identical poses, narrow bands of decoration running across the width of the painting, and bright and unusual color that replace the muted hues found in earlier Timurid painting. The illustrated manuscript of Niyamat Nama of the early 16th century, for instance, show the fusion of Persian and Indian style of painting. Now here we will focus on architecture. The architecture of Delhi Sultanate period was distinct from the Indian style which was prevailing during that period before the coming of Muslim rule in India. The Turks introduced arches, domes, lofty towers or minarets and decoration using the Arabic script. They used the skill of Indian stone cutters. They also added color to their building by using marbles, red and yellow sandstones. Probably the greatest artistic achievements of Sultanate was neither literature nor music but architecture. The Muslim brought to India the experience gained in the great building of Cairo, Baghdad, Cordova, and Damascus, and they were able to draw upon the skill of Indian stonemasons. This was the period when calligraphy, the art of the writing of Islamic verses on the building, was introduced in India, and the best example, the best place to see it is at Qutub Minar. In 1206 AD, in which Delhi was captured, the foundation of the Mosque of Quwwatul Islam Mosque was led by Qutbuddin Aibak to commemorate the capture of Delhi. After coming into the power, Iltutmish did more than double the size of Quwwatul Islam Mosque, built the Qutub Minar, one of the world's loveliest towers, erected the building for Nasiriya Madrasa. People generally do think Qutub Minar was built by Iltutmish in the honor of his father-in-law Qutbuddin Aibak, but no, it was in respect of Sufi saints Qutbuddin Bakhtiar Kaki. Qutub Minar was built by Iltutmish. Iltutmish also changed the architectural method. Previously, material from Hindu building had been used for constructing mosques, but in 1230 onwards, when Iltutmish extended the Quwwatul Islam Mosque, he used a stone especially quarried for the same purpose. By the time of Alauddin Khalji, Muslim traditions had become firmly established on Indian soil, with the result that methods of construction were revolutionized and ornament becoming an integral part of the scheme. The Jamaat Khana Mosque, constructed in the reign of Alauddin, is the earliest surviving example in India for a mosque built wholly in accordance with the Muslim ideas. In Bengal also, the Muslim ruler decorated their building with carving, which is obviously the work of Hindu craftsmen. In Gujarat, Sultan adopted the local style of Muslim needs to create some of India's most beautiful building. Furthermore, the Muslim made full use of concrete and mortar, which were known for scarcely used before the coming of Muslim in India. At the time of Alauddin Khalji, he also decided to build the similar tower like Qutub Minar, and under his guidance the foundation was laid down and that building was known as Alai Minar. But in the meanwhile he died and the construction was that Minar was not completed even after his death by his successor or the Tughlaq rulers. The Tughlaq dynasty, which was established by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq in 14th century, introduced a new and austere phases in architecture. Muhammad Tughlaq, who shifted his capital from Delhi to Daulatabad, had no interest in the old city. The many buildings erected in Delhi during the reign of his successor, Firoz Shah, show a severely simplicity, possibly due as much to the need for economy as Firoz's own strict orthodoxy. Hindu influence were reduced to the minimum and Tughlaq buildings were lacking elegance and refinement. Under the Lodhis, there was re-emerged a vigorous and Catholic spirit of design, replete with the creative energy and imagination. The Lodhi were soon replaced by the Mughals, under whom Persian influence became even more dominant. In this module, we have discussed about the changes which were taking place in the society with the coming and establishment of a new ruler, that was having a different religious faith, which was not known to North India previously. We have focused on how the society and culture got affected and how there is a synthesis between Indian culture and the culture of the people who came from outside as a ruling class. We have also focused here how the condition of the woman got affected with the coming of Parda system and the system which was prevailing since ancient period like Sati, and Johar was a new element which was introduced during that period, again marginalized the women section in early medieval period or the period which we call it Sultanate age. While there was a progress in literature, Arabic literature, while the huge progress which we can realize in the Persian literature, and even king used to give patronage to the people who used to write in Persia or Persian language. In the same way, there was a regional language like Bengali, then the Kashmiri, then the Marathi. The different ruler of that territory, they used to give patronage to the scholars who used to write in regional languages also. Here we have discussed about the music, how there was a synthesis between Indian and Iranian music, and that created a new ragas, new method, new instrument was came into origin. Similarly, we have focus here regarding the influence of painting and how the painting was become a new area of the interaction between the Hindu and Muslims during Sultanate age. The most important contribution that is quite visible, that is made by the rulers of Muslim faith, that too in architecture. The best example still exists where we can go and see that Qutub Minar, where there is a beautiful calligraphy is there, and that looks quite original. That idea of calligraphy was introduced by Muslims. Calligraphy was the art of writing holy verses of Quran on the building, which was introduced by Muslim in India after the establishment of their kingdom. For more detail, you please visit the e-text that is available on EPG Pathshala. Thank you very much.